Thank you all for coming. As I said to Alita when I come here and everybody else, I love coming to Minneapolis. I've been coming here for many years. I have a lot of friends here. So it's always good. Carolyn Holbrook invited me here to be at the law for a month. And that was a wonderful experience. That was my first introduction to Minneapolis. I think I'd come here and read before, but I hadn't met anybody, you know. And so I've been coming back time and time again. And, you know, Coffee House, Alan Kornblum and Chris Fischbach have been really great to me, publishing my work, arguing about it. That's cool. You know, sometimes I feel like jumping through the phone, you know what I mean? But that's what editors do, because I know people feel that way about me and the journal I run, Black Renaissance Noir. They want to kill me right on the spot, you know what I mean? Because I reject their work or I say they got to change it or whatever. But I just wanted to say that I love coming here. I'm so happy that our leader invited me and Archie, who I've known and been in his house, and his wife Carolyn, giving me great parties. I staggered through the snow at night, blind, didn't know where I was going, you know, after all that wine and food and stuff, and all those conversations I had there. So thank you again for coming, and like I said, I enjoy coming here. I'm going to read, not for long, and then we're going to go over there and talk. I thought about what I should, because I have 800 pages of poetry, so it's hard to like cut it down, you know. It's like really hard to read like 20 minutes or so, and so I'm going to read, I'm going to start out reading because my mother, I told, you know, my mother will be 93 this year, and she's coming to New York to bug me again next week. So, you know, my mother is a wonderful woman. And so I thought I would read this one. I have two, but I'm going to read this one because this one was about how she is now. But this one is about her and captures her in another way. Mother, and then I'm going to read one from my father and then move on. Mother for Dorothy Smith Marshall. When I was growing up, she used to sit in the bathroom each and every morning, smoking cool cigarettes, drinking hot coffee, reading newspapers, a hard toilet seat caressing her big derriere, reading glasses in place serious as cancer, the way her eyes devoured everything, finished old newspapers stacked up high as her waistline when she stood, proud, erect, defiant, all of 5 feet 2 inches tall in high-heeled shoes. Petite, she was a pistol when she was young, still is. Eyes blazing, boring in like bullets when her temper squeezed the trigger of her ire hard. Her rage, angry scars she raised on me and my brother's backs and legs. Dealt out with ironing cards that hiss through the air like whips, coiled snakes about to strike. It was her mother's influence, she used to say. She was scared to death of her mama to be in my brother Timmy, who believed in retribution, payback, fear. To the bitter end, we watched mama slap mother around hard once or twice for some perceived transgression or indiscretion, but we loved them both deeper than fear itself. Loved mama too, because we knew we were a lot to handle. My brother and me, born to do mischief in a neighborhood full of young thieves, malcontents, murderers to be. You name it. They thrived and flourished there. The good and straight we rejected out of hand as past tense. Negro. Square as blocks we played with once until we wrapped hands around straight razors. So she cracked the whip hard, raised whelps on our backs and hardening butts, legs and arms, kept fear alive in us to keep us in line and alive. She always had books around the house, introduced me to poetry and novels, wanted to be a school teacher. Raising me and my brother got in the way of that. And as she grew older, She left a string of glassy-eyed suitors in her wake. My father being the first who didn't make it all the way home. Where her sweet perfume trailed through the air like flowers blooming flesh in springtime, gardenias of Lady Day, sometimes jasmine or roses. It depended on her mood. But there was always something about her that kept them coming back for more. Time and again, whatever she had bewitched them. Her charm, maybe, that could be as dazzling as the smile flashing above her sensuous walk that beckoned. Her step so light, she seemed to float through air. Marani yellow in skin tone, plum, cushiony lips, splashed bright red and full smooth. She called herself a party girl. Though she was always much more than this, though she was this too. With a great sense of style, dressed to kill, cock robin, could press pedal to the metal out on the dance floor. She caused heads to swivel on necks like spinning tops whenever she passed. Her fragrance tantalizing nostrils trailing behind her like a sweet-smelling, invisible plume. She's in her 80s now, still sits on the toilet stool each and every morning, repeating the same ritual, only now she doesn't smoke anymore. Everybody's gone to the other side on her side of the family. Mama, her brothers Garfield and Allen, aunts and uncles, cousins, her daddy, mine too. And men her age still snip behind her glassy-eyed whenever she honors them when she looks their way. Still a fashion plate, the best of her time. Her smile remains dazzling. Her skill to squeeze copper from a penny, squirrel away money, a survivor of the Depression. She is tenacious for rainy days. She's softer now. Tells me she loves me every time we speak over the telephone. Tells me with regret she could have done better by me, but that's hogwash because she did the best she could with what she had, and that was more than enough to get us through all that madness. She's still a pistol at 81. Has all her real teeth too, she will tell you. Has outlived all her suitors except this last one, Biff, who she says is slowing down at 79. She still walks with a bounce and a stride, seems to still float across and through the air, her eyes blazing, bore in on you still like bullets whenever she squeezes the trigger of her hot temper. And I love her more than I could ever imagine. Love her far deeper than fear itself. She used to say, thank you. So when I wrote that poem, I read it to her over the phone. She said, "You gonna read that poem in public?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, why you have to mention my age?" That's why I laughed when you said that. "Why you have to mention my age?" I said, "I'm gonna write more and I'm gonna reach your age till you go on the ground. You might be 98. I'm gonna still mention your name." "All right," she goes. So I went to St. Louis once and didn't read it. She said, "You gonna read that poem?" This is from my father. My father was a great baseball player, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. So that's one of the reasons and he's dead, and he was the second greatest catcher of all time in the old Negro Leagues. And I grew up between St. Louis, Cuba, St. Louis, Puerto Rico, St. Louis, and Mexico for the first 8 years of my life. And so it was kind of weird going in and out, saw all these languages, and I think it warped me to this day. That and falling out of the car and hitting my head when I was 4, so I think that made me a little crazier, you know. So, you know what I mean? So, I mean, you're a kid, you just don't understand all of that, you know. But I was so happy that he was able to take me to those places, and I grew up in those places because I'm very comfortable going around the world now. I'm just very comfortable being in all kind of different situations. I'm very comfortable. So this is for my father, and this poem is set in the 40s. When he was playing, and you'll hear some references to some people. Poem from my father for Quincy Troupe. He added a P, Senior. Father, it was an honor to be there in the dugout with you. The glory of great black men swinging their lives as bats at tiny white balls, burning in at unbelievable speeds, riding up and in and out. A curve breaking down wicked, like a ball falling off a high table, moving away, snaking down, screwing its stitch magic into chittling circuit air, its comma seam spinning toward breakdown. Dipping like a hipster, bebopping, a knee-deep stride in the Charlie Parker 40s, wrist curling like a swan's neck behind a slick black back, cupping an invisible ball of dreams. And you there, Father, regal as an African, a boa man, sculpted out of wood from a sacred tree of no name, no place origin, thick roots branching down into Cherokee and someplace else lost way back in Africa, the sap running dry, crossing from North Carolina into Georgia, inside Grandmother Mary's womb, who was your mother, and had you there in the violence of that red saw. Ink blotter news gone now into blood and bone graves of American blues, sponging rococo, truth long gone as dinosaurs. The Agent Orange landscape of former names, absent of African polysyllables, dry husk consonants there now in their place, names flat as polluted rivers. And that guitar string smile, always snaking across some virulent American redneck's face, scorching like atomic heat, mushrooming over Nagasaki and Hiroshima. The fever blistered shadows of it all, inked as body etchings into sizzled concrete. But you there, Father, through it all. A yardbird solo, riffing on bat and ball glory, breaking down all fabricated myths of white major league legends of who was better than who, beating them at their own crap game with killer bats as Bud Powell swung his silence into beauty of a Josh Gibson home run, skittering across piano keys of bleachers, shattering all manufactured legends up there in light, struck out white knights on the risky, slippery edge of amazement, all the miraculous truth slipping through, steeped and disguised in the blues, confluencing like the point at the cross when a fastball hides itself up in a shimmying slider, curve breaking down and away in a wicked slide grin, curved and broke down like the back of an ass-scratching Uncle Tom who, like old Satchel Paige, delivering his famed hesitation pitch before coming back with a high, hard, fast one, rising, is sometimes slicker, slipping and sliding, and quicker than a professional hitman. The deadliness of it all, the sudden strike like that of the brown bummer's short crossing right, or the hook of Sugar Ray Robinson's lightning cobra bite. And you there, Father, through it all, yes, catching rhythms of China Pozo balls, drumming like Cuban conga beats into your catcher's mitt, hard and fast as cool Papa Bell jumping into bed before the lights went out of the old Negro baseball league. A promise you were, Father, yes, a harbinger of shockwaves. Shockwaves soon come, soon come. I'm going to read about 5 more, and then I'm going to sit down. This is the basketball season, so I'm going to read these 2 poems from Magic Johnson. One from Magic Johnson, one for Michael Jordan in a row. Then I'll jump to something else. One is Magic Johnson was such a creative player. Not that Michael Jordan wasn't, but Michael Jordan was a great explosive scorer. And as a former basketball player, I look at him in different ways. And Magic was an improvisational genius with the ball. And also, he's 6'9". He's 6'9" with them stark legs and everything, and he's leading a fast break, looking over everybody, passing. And I mean, his whole thing was like me. I was like that. I came to beat you. You know, I came to beat however I could. You know, however I could. And he was like that. And so was Michael. But Michael was more of a scorer. You know, he was more of a scorer. Magic Johnson could beat you in all kinds of ways. Like that night when Kareem Jabbar got hurt, and then the coach said, Magic, you're gonna have to play center tonight. Okay, coach. He said, well, I'm gonna need you to get points, rebounds, and assists. Okay, coach. He got 42, 15, and 11. Now, you know what I mean? You say, whoa, and then they beat Philadelphia and Dr. J. I mean, that was unbelievable. When you think about it, okay, coach, I'll do it. Second year in the pros. I mean, that's something. So this is a poem for Magic. So this one is not, it's a free verse. And the other one you're going to hear is a villanelle, which is a classic French form, because Michael was more mechanical. And I was trying to think of a way to think about how Michael Jordan beat Utah in 41 seconds. You know, so it had to be shorter. It had to be shorter, you know what I mean? Technical, you know? People don't think about poetry as being technical, but it is. It's craft, you know, it's craft. Poem for Magic, for Irvin Magic Johnson, Donnell Reed. These are friends of mine, Donnell Reed and Richard Franklin. Donnell Reed became the biggest black banker in the state of Missouri, and Richard Franklin is one of the great architects, who lives in New York now, by the way. Take it to the hoop, Magic Johnson. Take the ball dazzling down the lane. Herk and jerk and raise your 6 feet and 9 inch frame into air. Sweating screams of your name. Neon name, Magic Johnson. Nickname Windex way back in high school, 'cause you white glass backboard so clean. Where you first juked and shook, wild your way to glory. A new style fusion of shake and bake energy, using everything possible. You created your own space to fly through. Any moment now, we expect your wings to spread feathers for that spooky takeoff of yours. Then shake and glide and ride up in space till you hammer home a clotheslining deuce off glass. Now come back down with a reverse hoodoo gem off the spin and stick it in sweet popping nets clean from 20 feet right side. Put the ball on the floor again, Magic. Slide the dribble behind your back. Ease it deftly between your bony stalked legs, head bobbing ever which way, up and down. You see everything on the court. Off the high, yo-yo pattern. Stop and go dribble. You thread a needle rope pass, sweet home to Kareem, cutting through the lane. His skyhook pops the cars. Now lead the fast break, hit worthy on the fly. Now blindside, a pinpoint, behind the back pass for 2 more. Off the fake, looking the other way. You raise off balance into electric space, sweating chants of your name. Turn 180 degrees off the move. Your legs scissoring space like a swimmer's yo-yoing motion in deep water, stretching out now toward free flight. You double pump through human trees, hang in place, slip the ball into your left hand, then deal it like a Las Vegas car dealer off squared glass, into nets, living up to your singular nickname so bad you cartwheel the crowd toward frenzy, wearing now your electric smile, neon as your name. In victory, we suddenly sense your glorious uplift, your urgent need to be champion, and so we cheer with you, rejoice with you for this Quicksilver moment of fame. So put the ball on the floor again, Magic, juke and dazzle, shake and bake down the lane. Take the sucker to the hoop, Magic Johnson. Recreate reverse hoodoo gems off the spin. Alley-oop deal, alley-oop dunkathon. Magician passes now, double pump, scissor. Vamp through space, hang in place, and put it all up in the sucker's face, Magic Johnson. And deal the round ball like the juju man that you am, like the show-enough shaman man that you am. Magic like the show-enough spaceman you am. Thank you. 41 seconds on a Sunday in June in Salt Lake City, Utah, for the great Michael Jordan. Rising up in time, Michael Jordan hangs like an icon. Suspended in space, cocks his right arm, fires a jump shot for 2. The title game on the line, his eyes 2 radar screens screwed like nails into the mask of his face. Bore in on the basket, gaze focused, a thing of beauty, no shadow or trace, no hint of fear in this, his show place, his ultimate place to shine. Rising up in time, Michael Jordan hangs like an icon, suspended in space. After his move from baseline to baseline, sideline to sideline, his cold face shining, wagging his tongue, he dribbles through chaos, snaking serpentine, his eyes 2 radar screens screwed like nails to the mask of his face. He boats a flash up the court, takes off, floats in for 2 more in this race for glory. It is his time, what he was put on earth for. He can see the headline. Rising up in time, Michael Jordan hangs like an icon, suspended in space. Inside his imagination, he feels the moment he will embrace, knows his place is written here, inside this quickening pace of nerves. He will define, his eyes 2 radar screens screwed like nails into the mask of his face. inside this moment, he will rule on his own terms. Quick as a cat, he interfaces time, victory, and glory. As he crosses over his dribble, he is king of this shrine, rising up in time. Michael Jordan hangs like an icon, suspended in space. His eyes, 2 radar screens screwed like nails into the mass of his face. For Lucille Clifton, B.B. King named his guitar Lucille. And I had the honor to come and read for Lucille at Hunter College in New York. So I wrote this poem for that occasion. Lucille, for Lucille Clifton. If you were a guitar, Lucille, B.B. King would play beautiful blues songs all over your ample spirit. But you're a poet, sister, so you play your own wondrous riffs. Through notes of your own words, they dig down deep. Sewn within your music, boned. You keep them inside your brief, luminous sentences of echoes, sounding like sonorous utterings, flight-seeking light inside a flute's breath. Bird wings lifting off on a wind's rustling flight. Your elliptic absences, pregnant with Sozeras, arrest us with their sorrow. Wing loves gone too fast from you now. Always test the elixir of your rooted deep faith. Everywhere in your poetry, the conviction of living spirit, beauty shining through the bravery of your life is a bright flashing beacon pulsating harmony in all this darkness. Your embrace warms us as the sun during summer. It is abiding your faith that holds me fast to you now, sister. Inside your sweet, nourishing well of love, I know there's a river between us. We can always cross over. We can cross over it again and again and again. Can always cross over that river with faith. Can always cross over it with love again and again and again, like you do, Lucille, like you do. I want to end with 2 new poems from my new book. One is the title poem, so it's called Erancites. Erancites means to wonder. Errance means to wonder in French. It's a French word, means to wonder. And, I thought I'd make it my word, turn it into a noun. So, Erancites. And so it was interesting for me. I wrote this poem down in Guadeloupe. I write a lot down there. So this poem is dedicated to my friend Edouard Glissant, the Martinican poet. He's a great Martinican poet. And where I first saw the word in one of his works. The mind wanders as a line of poetry taking flight, meanders. In the way a bird spreading wings to lift into space knows the sky is full of surprises like Erancites, encountering restless journeys as in the edgy solos of Jimi Hendrix, Miles Davis. Listen to the night song of sea waves crashing in, foaming. It is carrying the voices of liquid history, splashing on shore after traveling across distance, time, and space. It's like a teeming language of music heard at the tip of a sharp blade of steel as it cuts through the air, singing as a sword slicing clean. A head from its neck, then drops it like a rock landing on earth before it rolls like a bowling ball, leaving a snaking trail of blood. It reminds of Erancites wandering through our lives as metaphors for restless movement, sudden change, surprise. In the way you hear Erancites of double meaning in music, Erancites of syncopations springing from hidden places, sea and blue space, metasis. Sound is what our ears know. Receive when you hear voices, speaking tongues, bursting with explosive energy, carrying sounds, blooming as as leaves with iridescent colors like rainbows arching across skies, beautiful as joy and sadness, accumulating poetry, knowing no forms or boundaries. 2. What is history but constant recitations of flawed associations, pushed over edges of moral sanity, pursuing wars, pillage, enslavement of spirits is what most nations do, posing as governance throughout cycles of our breaths, imagination plundered for profit over the world, religions practiced on topography as weapons, tools, topography used as text to conquer the mind for gold, to slaughter whole civilizations, become flotsam, floating across seas like cut trees without remorse. Men wander this planet, destroying everything they touch without memory. Beauty is only greed for these nomadic avatars of destruction, gizzard-hearted Darth Vaders, celebrating nothing but shock doctrines to balloon earning sheets. Annihilation becomes their creed, with no room for remorse. 3. But poetry still lives somewhere in airstreams, serenading voices, lives in the restless sea, speaking a miscegenation of tongues, lives within the holy, sacred miracle of birds elevating in flight, is there in erranceties, inside the accumulation of daybreaks, after a symphony of frog voices, collaborated with crickets underneath the milky eye of a full moon here in Guadalupe, Guayave. Listen to the melange of sounds compelling in nature's tongue. It is beautiful as an invitation for sharing. Wondrous music is a summons to recognize. Improvisation is always a path cutting through divergence as the sound of scolopendra is rooted somewhere in wonder, where humans explode with thickets of words. Celebrating the human spirit is what imaginations of poets look for in songs of birds lifting off for somewhere above the pulse of sea waves, full of voices immense with the sound of poetry and beauty, wind serenading through leaves, fruit sweet as fresh water. After all, it is possible love might be deeper than greed is itself, a memory. Always possible here to bring us to reconciliation, perhaps inside restless Matisse, commingling voices of erranceties, wonder, inside magic. The mystery of creation pulls us all forward to know human possibility is always a beautiful gift. Connections. I look out my window, see the mangoes ripening on the trees, starting to block my view of the sea. As it grows larger, somewhere a man sits with a rifle, pointing it at someone's head or heart without sentiment, without knowing who they are before killing them. At the same moment, a bird lifts off a branch where an egg is hatching above the man who just pulled the trigger, before someone else who doesn't know him either locks in on his head. X marks the spot on his forehead with a rifle scope. Time is always changing across the globe. Around the clock, seconds constantly moving. Tick-tock about its face. Tick-tock measures time, moves the bottom line of the balance sheet. What do we really know of shifts, crack, happening in many seconds, onomatopoeia, clocking intervals, brief as what senses recognize. When music changes the tempo, rhythm moves the body somewhere else. A fault line shifts ground underneath our feet. Deep beneath the earth, there is movement, violence we will not know until we see dirt opening up in front of us. Concrete streets, sidewalks splitting, shaking buildings crumbling is a message from God, connecting all of us to a deep, awesome power. 2. What are the connections between people waging war who have never even met each other in the flesh, who drop bombs on people making love in their bedrooms, bombs on children playing in their own backyards, doom, doom from somewhere high in the blue, doom, doom. They explode because someone said they are our enemies. Who said why to whom? What did they do to us in the first place? We didn't do to them before we doomed them, as we have done in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Panama. Why do they hate us so? We said after blowbacks on 911. There are connections that bind us each to our actions. Everywhere images cross wires in many second erancities. Somewhere, somebody is a walking time bomb about to go off, explode, do whatever it takes to destroy. At the same time, a climbing wisteria, blossoms of purple drooping flower around Santa Fe at the foot of the Sangria de Cristo, blood of the Christ mountains, Spatapendium, blue hydrangeas bloom in the Sonora desert. A brightly beaded Gila monster looms, slowly hunts for small animals with a keen sense of smell, digs for bird eggs hidden beneath the sand. 3. There are people who know secrets of balancing competing agendas, who use words of yin and yang. In the world, all people are equally human. Everyone's heart beats in their chest like metronomes until they stop. Most things in nature seem symmetrical in their ferocious forces, housing harmonious discord. As in an exploding volcano, a lion is running down a wildebeest, killing it in the Serengeti Ngorongoro crater. Anacondas crushing, then swallowing large dogs seem asymmetrical until you consider they have to eat something. Sometimes it's not murder, but survival, an act of mercy rather than killing for malice, revenge, as in murder because of skin color. Worshipping different gods, murdering an entire family for anger by machine gun fire is different than when huge flames devour dream mansions in conflagrations in California. Is different for those who live with nature in danger zones where rivers flood, fires rage through hot zones. Though the pain is the same to the hearts of those who go back to sift through ashes, their entire lives gone up suddenly in smoke, swept away by surging rivers, tsunamis, blown apart by fear, some hurricane, tornado winds, earthquakes, as those whose lives are blown to smithereens after murder by gunfire. Compassion is still the same here, as an act of mercy when our hearts embrace all. 4. During moments of terrible pain, most experience truth. Perhaps feel it deeply in their hearts as a flash of wisdom, paving the way to critical insight or beauty or both. Perhaps it's some life-changing force, as in the instant you know death is truly here, is possible, there is possible, as daybreak will most certainly come if there is no world-ending conflagration after darkness. Flowers at the bottom of the sky will bloom somewhere. 2 people will make love with their hearts. Children will be born. Old enemies will embrace differences. Life will go on in harmonious discard until it ends. Perhaps this is all we can dream of. Hope for a few single moments when there is clarity in our lives, instances of mercy revealing beauty, truth, as in seeing the mango tree growing outside my window, beginning to ripen, delicious fruit hanging from its branches blocks my view of the sea. I know it's there anyway. I can be thankful. High up in those branches, birds sing joyously every day. My heart sings with them. Every time I hear their music, the moment my eyes open, I breathe in whatever the day brings. Time, full of holy acts, profoundly sacred. These connections we have, each to each, are blessed gifts. We share hearts, felt art. We share gifts when we share heartfelt acts of deep love, of very deep love. Thank you. We do this down there.
So, Orosities, tell us more about that. What are you wondering about?
I know. See, it's wandering. Wandering. Maybe I say wandering. It's me wandering because I'm a restless person, and I'm always going different places. Like I got caught in France last week. That wasn't my fault though. That was Iceland's fault. Oh, I'm sending them all the receipts.
Yeah,
I'm sending them all the receipts I got. But you know, I love to travel, and I love to travel. But that's not.
So it's about movement.
It's about movement. It's about movement. It's about thought processes and about you know. I think in order to be an informed person, you have to be restless, and your mind has to try to deal with all of the kinds of differences that we see every day and bring them together in some kind of way. And so my mind is always wandering, as my body is. So that's why I was trying to get to that.
So in a way, it is a kind of wondering.
It is a wondering.
I mean, at the same time. Well, but the idea then is, well, how do you think they all come together? All of the travel, all of the things that the movement that you're making, the travel that you do, the things you're thinking about. How does that all coalesce into? I'm thinking about your work early on.
Yeah.
And this work is really different, right?
Yeah, it's really different.
It's really different. Can you talk about that difference? What is that progression like?
Well, see, like I said, I blame it all on my father for being a baseball player and traveling like he did. And so I was opened up at a very early age of movement, of going places. And I always used to love going to places with my father. And so for me, I think that you can come to wisdom. And I grew a lot when I used to live in France, after coming to the United States and living here, after all that moving, staying here for a good deal of time, and then going to France in the Army, and was on the All-Army basketball team and playing all over Europe, and on a French team playing all over France, you know. So again, it opened up to me seeing all of these different people, and I was one of 7 African American people that went to high school in St. Louis amongst 3,000 whites. And they didn't want me there. Yeah. They didn't want me there, and I didn't want to be there either. They didn't never ask me if I wanted to be there. I didn't want to be there either, you know what I mean? Because they didn't want me. I don't like to be nowhere nobody likes me. And so anyway, it was a lot of tension and fights and all that. And so after that, going to France, and I met these French people. Now, I'm not saying all French people like this, and playing on this French team. One of my teammates, I was the only African-American, only black person on that team, and the only American on this French team. And this guy who played forward asked me one day, told me, my sister really, really likes you. And I said, oh, yeah? He said, yeah. And I said, well, I go with so-and-so. He said, yeah, no. And, it'd be great to have you as a brother-in-law. I said, a what? A brother-in-law? What? I mean, first I had to get over the shock, and then, but he was a French white guy, and he was asking me. I had never heard nobody say that to me in the United States. Nobody never said that to me. And I knew a lot of people. They never said it, and I knew him longer than I knew him. But that opened my head up to some things, about how certain people felt about me, because I had this whole attitude about, because of my experience at Beaumont and at going to Grambling College, of white people in the United States, and that opened up the possibility that there was some white people that was like him, that were like him.
That you had missed.
That I had missed somehow. I had missed them, I don't know, and I found them later on because I started to look, for other people, but I'd had such a miserable experience in high school.
And I'm thinking about all of that, thinking also about the poet.
Yeah.
So how does all that, how do you choose, you talked about the difference between the form, the Villanelle for Michael Jordan, and the open free verse for Magic. How does all that relate to, all right, so the Erasmus, when you sit down to write the next poem, how does form happen? How does subject happen?
Well, see, when I came back, I was going to say that. When I came back to the United States, I hurt my knee, this knee. And I was supposed to play professional basketball. And I didn't want to be sitting on somebody's bench. So somehow I started writing. I wrote this awesomely bad novel in France.
I know the feeling.
Awesomely bad. It was terrible. And I knew I had, And so I met John Paul Sartre through my girlfriend because she said that he was a writer and he could give me some hints. And but he didn't want to give me no hints because, you know, it was bad. I had already said it was bad. So, like, you know, he wanted to ask me about the civil rights movement. You know, and he started talking about Miles Davis. And I said, I love Miles Davis. I did love Miles Davis. So anyway, to make a long story short, I started writing poetry there. You know, I started writing poetry in France. But it was such a new experience for me. And I didn't know nothing about it. So when I got back, I decided I was going to read some books and learn how, and try to teach myself how to write forms. So I did. And I read Babette Douche, and I read these other books on farms and everything. And my first poetry were those poems. They were forms. They were villanelles, sestinas, sonnets, haikus, all of those. But then when I moved to California, and I met Ojinki and the poets that out there who were coming out of the church, the African American church. I threw away all of those poems. I threw them away, and I started writing in that way. You know. I started writing in a more free verse way where I started to, instead of doing iambic pentameter or hexameter or things like that, I started trying to substitute John Coltrane notes for words, or Miles Davis cards for words, you know, trying to get that kind of, you know, I was trying to do that.
Is this going on in your head, or are you doing this? Are you making that sound, or is Coltrane in the background?
No, I listened to Coltrane, and then I started mimicking what he was doing. And then eventually, I started making my own sounds. But that comes out of Coltrane. You know, that comes straight out of him, lifted. You know, I had memorized all his solos. You know, and so I started substituting those for the iambics and things. And so, you know, and at a certain point, I got a little confused because I couldn't figure it all out, you know. And so I had to let it all go. One of the reasons I put a poem, Ode to John Coltrane, in that book, Transcircularities, was because that was the first poem that was liberating to me. It's in Transcircularity. And that poem was liberating to me, although it was heavily indebted to, and I borrowed from Dylan Thomas. Dylan Thomas and Pablo Neruda and all those people. But I wanted to put that as the first poem in that book because it did show me about the whole thing about improvisation in the church, and a lot of that was in it. And so from that poem on, I was beginning to try to bring together my own voice, my own way of looking at things, my own way of hearing, the words and the rhythms and everything.
So do you think people, when you're, I mean, I know you've been in and out of the academy, when you are around poets who don't come from the same cultural tradition that you do, who aren't familiar with Coltrane or Miles, how do they relate to that movement in your work?
I think sometimes some of them were overwhelmed and they thought I didn't know what I was doing. They just thought I didn't know what I was doing. And I remember when I started, and then all of a sudden I fooled them and started writing, writing these villanelles and sestinas and sonnets and all that, and started trying to create and I did all that with Coffee House. And I started trying to put all these tercets, and they were saying, "Oh, I didn't know you know how to write sestinas and villanelles." And I said, "You never asked either, did you? You never inquired. You didn't care. You didn't think I knew how to do that. That I was doing this. I was writing like the other way I was writing because I wanted to. I was pursuing something. It was my culture. I remember I was telling some people one time, we were John Ashbery and myself, and I like John. Yeah. And this guy was talking about John Ashbery, this, and I knew John had come out of listening to classical music, and I knew that, and he admits it. And we were talking in this conversation. I said, well, and they were trying to call me a jazz poet. I said, well, you gonna call John a classical poet? A classical European poet because he listened to classical music? Why you gonna call me a jazz poet and you ain't gonna call him nothing? You gonna call him an American poet. American poet. I mean, jazz is an American art form, quintessential. Quintessential. The blues and jazz are a quintessential American form. And I said, no offense, John, but you listening to European classical music, a classical, so-called classical form. But he's an American poet and I'm not.
Right.
That don't make sense to me. That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
So I was in pursuit of that. And it wasn't, so they felt, I think, a little overwhelmed. And at first they didn't think I knew what I was doing. And then when they did know, I thought a lot of them were a little bit intimidated. You know, when they realized that I had read all the people they had read,
Right.
and they had not read the people I had read, then the conversation could be limited because I had to deal with them on where they were. They couldn't come over here and deal with me and talk about the people I knew.
That's profound, really, because, I mean, as writers, artists of almost in every discipline, artists of color have to deal with the fact that we have to learn our cultural reality and the rest of the world's European whatever, but other people don't think they have to come to know us. So, I mean, for example, I have had editors who had never read James Baldwin.
Right.
Like, how could you can't even talk to me if you haven't read James Baldwin.
Right, right. But they thought they could.
But they did.
They did.
And they have power over me.
Somebody came up to me one day and said, "Why do you like Garcia Marquez so much? I don't even know what he's talking about." I said, "Does that mean that you stupid? Or what? You know what I mean? If you can't get him, I mean, what does that make me? I understand him totally. I mean, I understand him and Faulkner and Hemingway and everybody. So why can't you better ask yourself why you don't understand Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Exactly.
You know, you better ask yourself that question.
Exactly.
You better ask yourself why you don't understand Amy Césaire.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, T.S. Eliot is from St. Louis. He's totally different from me. You know, but I understand what he's doing. Totally.
You also probably read, I had to read James Joyce. I mean,
I read that.
So, I mean, if you can read James Joyce, and then people say, well, jazz, I can't, it's too complicated.
That's what it, yeah.
I mean, anyway, that's a whole nother issue. I was talking about, I compared, in a way, your work to Lucille's very casually. And, I mean, I don't know whether you've ever thought about it that way, but I really, Lucille spoke to the common good woman. I mean, her book was Good Woman. I always think of her as this way of talking really directly about day-to-day life, about simple things in very deep ways. Yeah. You call it elliptical, like you fill in all that space. We do. But I think, and I wouldn't say that you're elliptical in that way, and I think you were actually saying that, because you sort of fill out that picture completely. But in another way altogether, I think you get at very basic things about humanity and about our lives. Particularly, and I'm thinking, I don't know how this relates to Erosities, but I think in terms of the historical record of your poetry, I feel like you're talking always about average, common, aside from the musicians and the Mileses and the Louis Armstrongs and the Dukes that you do talk about, but a lot of times you are talking about like common feelings, you would agree?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I was sitting up one day and I was thinking about, I want to write this poem about kissing, So I wrote this poem. I said, the other brandy sweet night, I dreamed we was kissing so hard and good, you sucked my tongue right on out my mouth, and I had to sew it back in, baby, in order to tell you about it.
I started to read that poem.
So, I was trying to think of a simple way to write how your tongue feels when somebody's sucking on it, and right here, and it was like, and that's what came out, and I heard somebody say, that's not a poem. That's not a poem. Somebody said that at a reading. Oh, God, Jesus Christ. What are they clapping about? I heard the guy say that, but, I let him go, so. But, but the point is that the reason I wrote the Magic Johnson poem was because everybody was writing basketball poems, and they were writing them very slow, ponderous poems about basketball. And they had never played. Now, basketball is a very fast game with tall guys and moving down like gazelles and everything. It's like quick, So I wanted the lines to be quick. I wanted them to be quick. I wanted it to be exciting and quick and movement, even if it's a villanelle. You know what I mean? I wanted it to be like that, not like those ponderous poems that those people wrote, and trying to get to basketball. I'm like, oh, please. You know what I mean? Give me a break. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I wrote that poem, because I wanted to have an alternative to what was being put out.
Just for a second, can you take a trip into basketball? How does basketball relate to black culture? I mean, so what?
Well, I think that basketball relates to black culture because it's like improvisation. When you're on a great basketball team, you got set plays, and you're playing with some great players. It's also about improvisation. It's about improvisation. It's like a great Charlie Parker solo, and black people know that. I mean, especially it's urban. It's an urban game because when you turn the corner, when in Minneapolis, you know, but you know, New York is a really extremely urban public city. And when you turn the corner, you better be prepared for what's coming this way. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't know what's coming this way, but you better be in your head ready, you know, because it could be something bad. It could be something that is going to do you some harm, maybe.
Right.
So you have to have that in your head. You can't be walking around going, oh, it's so nice. Oh, it's so nice. Somebody said, give me all your money. You know, all of it. You know, I mean, I hate to say that, but it's the way it is. So you have to be able to improvise around your life around these kind of things. And basketball is a great game of basketball. You have to improvise. You know, you have to improvise on the cutbacks and everything else when the guy cuts back. That's why you don't like to play with nobody who can't play. Because, you know, you come toward him and you cut and you wide open, he's looking. You're saying, give me the ball. Give me the ball. You know what I mean? You're like, what is it? And you go up and tell him.
Next time.
Don't do that no more, man. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, it is a quick game, and it's like, so it relates. And I remember, I did an interview with Miles Davis at the at the Schomburg.
Right.
And we have it on tape, and Miles Davis stood, after he was talking, he said, yeah, it's like basketball, man. You know, music's like basketball. You go, bap, 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 bang. You know what I mean? And he's making sounds with it. It's like you dribble and you dunk, you know, or you dribble, pass, and you dunk, you know, or you shoot, catch, switch. And he was making I was astounded.
Wow.
You know, so that it's a quintessential urban game. Not that it can't be played in country places. It is, but it's a different game. It's a different game.
So the Hoosier, you know, that whole mythology around Hoosierdom is different from the urban game.
It's different from Earl of Pearl,
right,
or LeBron James, or Kobe Bryant,
right,
you know, or Dr. J,
right,
or Isaiah Thomas.
So it's literally a part of the aesthetic, a part of your. Is it a part? Does it make it into a part of your poetic aesthetic?
Yeah.
I mean, and in essence, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I wrote a piece on why I wrote the Magic Johnson poem.
Right.
And it's about an 8-page essay. And so I'm talking about it, you know, talking about this whole thing as it applies to poetry and music and everything else. You know, the game and how all of it applies and how it's all integrated. You know, because I really believe that things are integrated. I think that, you know, I always say to people, if they're white or Chinese or Latino or whatever, and we're in the United States, I said, you know, we're more similar than we are different. So what you're doing is concentrating on the difference.
Right.
I'm concentrating on the similarity. And you up here, that's why we don't come together.
Right.
He's black. He has dreadlocks. You know, he talks fast. You say, what does that got to do with anything? I mean, you talk slow, and you got straight hair. You know what I mean? So what does that got to do with essential stuff? Right. You know, like love and food and eating and coming together with people and doing things together as a nation, as a community. Yeah. And what does that have to do with doing good for people? Yeah. What you're talking about don't make sense. You know, to me, it doesn't make sense. So I'm always looking for where we can bring that kind of stuff together. The kind of possibilities of coming together.
Now, is this more recent in the evolution of your thinking? I mean, because I also think about that poem you began. I used to write poems about blowing up this motherfucking.
When I was in Watts.
Right.
Yeah, I used to say I write poems about blowing up because I did. I was just being honest, you know. I mean, yeah, I used to talk about burning down the city. Right. You know, because that was because the police in L.A. are some of the worst in the world. You know, and they always hitting you upside the head just because you're walking on the street.
Yeah, I just think it's fascinating the way the poets that we read, how that process of growing with us, of learning, then teaching us back what is learned. I mean, because obviously the journeys that you've gone on have had an effect on both what you write, how you think about what writing is, and I think that is what's important for us to talk about. Now, you mentioned Miles. Let's talk about Miles for a minute.
Okay.
Actually, why don't we start at the end? Why don't we start where the film that? What's the story with that?
Yeah, the film is going to start in May shooting, and they're supposed to start in May shooting in May, but you know Hollywood shifts, you know. But I know I got a good feeling because I was in France. There's this woman that my producer and Karen Gardy, who's Barry Gardy's. She's helping with this along with some other people, and this woman is one of her best friends, and she's a nuts and bolts person with putting films together, not writing or doing that, but packaging, you know. And I called her up because I couldn't come home, and so I was in Paris, so I called her up. She said, "Oh, Quincy, I'm on my way to Los Angeles for a month." And to work on the film. Aren't you going to be there? I said, I'm here until Sunday. And so what I'm saying is, so that gave me a good sign because she's going there to work. And to pull
because this has been in production a long time. I mean, it's in the process a while.
It's been in the process a while. And, but I've gotten to the point where with movies, it's not like publishing. You know,
right.
Somebody said they're going to publish a book, they're going to publish it at that time. But in movies, they say they're going to do it, and it's always slipping because somebody, this actor, Samuel Jackson, he's got another gig. Right. You know, Samuel Jackson is like James Brown. He's a hardest working person in movie making business.
He's going to be a part of this film.
Yeah, he's Miles.
He's Miles.
And so, and then Lawrence Fishburne is me.
Right.
And Halle Berry.
Isn't that something to say? Lawrence Fishburne is me.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's happening. You know. I mean, unless he drops out. I mean, I got a little tired of Lawrence looking at me like this. Everything I do, he's like watching what I do, and I'm saying, man, can we get together and you don't just like try to absorb me or something? You know what I mean? Like, damn, I feel uncomfortable eating. you know, he's watching. You know, I understand he's trying to absorb. You know,
yeah.
And but it's moving forward like that, and it's my screenplay. I wrote the screenplay. It was my first screenplay, and it was a learning experience.
So, I mean, maybe then we could take one last...
It's supposed to be out next year.
Next year, really?
Yeah.
Are we ready? So, I want to ask one last question, and then we'll open up to the audience. It just has to do with Miles, and it has to do with how Miles has affected who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, I heard Donna Lee when I was 15 in St. Louis, and it's chronicled in the book, Miles and Me.
Right.
And I walked in this place, and I walked in this fish joint, and I I saw these 4 black guys sitting over on Fair, and they were sitting back, and they had ascots on, and they had berets, and I was like, I always wanted to be hip, so I saw them, they were all hip, so I went and sat behind them to see if I could pick up something, maybe I can learn something, and they were talking about, this the homeboy across the river, because he's from East St. Louis, and we're from in St. Louis, Missouri. He's in Illinois. I said, and Miles Davis, Miles, so and so, yeah, and he's blah blah blah. I said, and then Bird. That's the first time I heard Bird. And Bird, who is Bird? What is Bird? What is? I was thinking, what does that mean? And so they said, if somebody got up and went over and played the record, and played Donna, and they played Donna, and I heard it, and it was the first music that I can say that I had heard that I was always trying to maneuver young women in the corner at the parties. So all the words, all at these dance parties with the blue lights, you're trying to get over here to the corner. That's the way guys do, even, you naughty, And it's like, but all those songs had words in them,
Yeah. Like stay in my corner. The Dells.
The Dells. You're a
stylistics. Okay, well,
you're 1,000 miles away. So we're going to get closer. Get closer. So I heard that, and I said, wow. And I went over, when they left, I went over and played it 3 times. Well, I had a quarter, and it was a nickel. The jukebox was a nickel then. I went and paid 3 times. And I went home, I was changed. I said, who is this guy, Miles Davis? Because the music went straight to my heart. It went straight to my heart. I had to know about him. So I started asking all my older friends, my cousins, who's Miles Davis? And all the older guys got tired of me. They're like, don't come here talking about Miles Davis. Talk about Bird. Learn about Bird. You know what I mean? So that's how I got into Miles. And so over time, I wanted to be like him. when I was younger, I didn't want to be like him when I met him. But but all that time when you're inside your head, I wanted to be like him.
Yeah.
But when I say I wanted to be like him as an artist,
Yeah.
then I started to want to be like him as an artist. But at first I wanted to be like him I didn't know who he was like, what he was like. But when I met him, it was wonderful. And I loved his music. It changed my life. Changed my life, the way I listened to things, the way I was as a person. So that was a wonderful thing for me to know him, get to know him. And so that's what that movie's about. From hero worship to friendship. From hero worship to friendship, where I could say to him, shut up, man.
Yeah.
Shut up.
If you haven't read Miles and Me, I mean, the stories about that process in which they become friends is really funny. And scary. I mean,
scary.
for it to actually be happening.
Yeah, it's scary too.
Okay, we'll open it up for the audience for questions or comments or thoughts, responses. Yeah.
Please wait till you have a microphone.
I was actually wondering about the number of languages you speak and how else they have affected your poetry other than errance.
Yeah. I can understand and speak some French and some Spanish. That's it. Because that's it. Because, but I get by, with that. I don't speak Russian, and my work has been translated. It was funny when I went to Germany to do this reading, and when the German translator got up and started reading my poems, I was like, is that my stuff? But it was wonderful, but I mean, it sounds so different, So that is what's wonderful when you hear your work. You go places and you hear your work translated, and somebody reads it, it's a wonderful experience for me, to hear my work in another language, So that's, yeah. Oh.
I'll help. We can both do it over here, too. Go ahead.
Hi, Quincy.
Hi.
I wanted to go back to when you were talking about Miles. Just the other day, I was listening to Doo-Bop, which was the one he was working on before he passed. I read in your memoir that though it was interesting in places, it was an unrealized project that he wanted to do more. Could you elaborate on what else he wanted to do?
Yeah. First thing, I was supposed to be on that. I was supposed to read some poems on that, right? So he died. So at the end of the movie, you'll see there's a scene where I go out and I was telling him, come up out of that grave. You asshole. Come up. You died before I read my poems on that album. It's kind of funny but crazy, And then I have him saying in there, get up off my grave. God damn it. Jumping up and down on my grave, disturbing the peace, shit. But I mean that was that. So, but I thought it was unrealized because it was unrealized. It was never finished, and he died before he was going to add a lot of other stuff to it, and he died before. A lot of people don't know that, but he died before he could finish it and edit it and do it like he wanted to do it, and so that's why I said it was unfinished. I like some of it, and I know some of the people who were on it, but they got a little pissed because I said that, and but it was true. That's where I felt about it. I felt it was unfinished.
Are there some recorded sessions with him and Jimi Hendrix?
No, that I know of.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah.
I have two questions.
No, one. No, I'm kidding.
First of all, I'd like to know, my sister told me to ask you this question.
Okay.
She wanted to know what was your Grambling State experience like, but I would like for you to say something about the Chris Gardner book. I didn't know before tonight that you were affiliated with that. It was wonderful.
Okay. My Grambling experience was kind of interesting because I went down there and I got kicked out twice. I got kicked out for beating up people. Because I had a good time there, but it was like, it was like we had a clash of the way culture, the way we saw each other. They're from Louisiana and they were country, and we were all city and clean, and we was hitting on all the women, They didn't like that so much. They claimed all of them as they women. So, hey, you're not even from New Orleans. What you talking about? You know. So then we'd have fights. You know what I mean? It would be crazy. It was this crazy. And so the president of the school I was down there on a baseball and basketball scholarship, and the president of the school was the baseball coach. That was weird. That was weird. Little Troupe, get your behind down. Get your hand behind, because I was a pitcher. And so he's the president, and I'm trying to like deal with him as the coach, and he's telling me to get my behind down when you feel ground ball. Get your behind down. Come on, son, come on. And then I see him the next day, and he's like, he's a PhD. Sorry, well, I'm like, so I had a little problem dealing with that, and I went back, and it was the same, you know. But I really had a great time there. I had a great, except for those problematic times, which forced me to go back to school later, you know. But you know, it was just a strange kind of spirit. And then it was strange because Grambling is in no man's land. Just nothing, you know. It's built up now. But then Chris Gardner chased me down because of the Miles Davis autobiography. I didn't know who he was. And he chased me down to write his book. And that's how that happened, you know. At first I said to him, well, who are you? You know, he said, well, I said, well, okay, you're going to have to tell me your story. You know, I'm coming to your house, you're going to tell me your story, and I'm going to see if I want to write this book. So that's really how it happened. So I go up to his apartment in the Trump Towers, and I sit there, and I was thinking, because I don't smoke, but he was a big smoker. He's smoking. I was like, I don't know if I want to be around this guy. He's smoking all the time. And then he started telling me a story, and it was powerful. It was a powerful story. So that's what convinced me to do that book, him telling me the story in his voice. I said, tell me the story in your voice in sentences. Tell me. You tell me. I'm not going to say nothing. And he did, and it was a powerful thing, and so that's how we did it. And then we had to agree on the money. He liked that. He's business. He won't like that.
Go ahead.
Hi, Quincy. Thank you so much. And all of you guys, I'm very happy to see you guys over here. But my question is, you like to travel, as you mentioned. Have you ever been to Africa? If you didn't, would you like to go there?
I've been to Africa, all over Africa. I taught for a year, 6 months in Ghana and 6 months in Nigeria. And I've been all over Africa, South Africa, everywhere. There's some places I haven't been, but Zaire, I was there for the Ali Foreman fight in Zaire, you know, and I tried to give George some advice about them dogs. He didn't listen to me, you know, and that's why Ali Bombardier came, because he was letting his Doberman German shepherds run through the streets, and he didn't know no history. He didn't know the history that the Belgians had let their dogs run through the streets and bite on these people. And I tried to tell him, George, there's a history here you don't know, brother. Them my dogs, boy. No dogs. You can't tell me about my dogs. I said, okay, man. All right, man, you don't want to listen. Keep throwing them sticks in the street. You know, and he did. And they started saying, Ali, bon baya. You know, they didn't say nothing about George. Over.
Quincy, you've spoken about the influence of jazz and sports on your work, but you also write a lot about painting, and you're married to an amazing art dealer.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about Margaret's influence on your work?
She ain't had no influence, no.
No influence, huh?
No, I'm kidding.
You got
She's
people
the one who
report
introduced
that.
you to painting.
You better be careful.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
No, I have a wonderful wife. I have just a marvelous wife. I'm very, very blessed. We've been together 34 years. And we fight all the time. And she owned one of the great art galleries in San Diego and in New York, so we are big collectors. Anybody been to my house knows that. I'm a big collector of art, and so the paintings have a big influence on my work. Have a big influence on my work. I'm always walking around looking at them in my apartment. You know, I remember Skunda Balkazian, who's on the back of. I left it up there. Anyway, Skunda Balkazian is on the back. He's an Ethiopian painter. And he was a good friend of mine. He's dead now. We born on the same day. He's born on the same day. I'm born on the same July 22nd. Danny Glover's born on that day. And Will Calhoun. We used to have parties together. Will Calhoun, the great bass player for Living Color. And we all born on the same day, July 22nd. And Skunda, we were walking in the subway one time, and Skunda said, look, 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 look. So I'm looking over the tracks, and I saw a rat running, 2 rats running. And I'm thinking, is he trying to show me a rat or what? Is he trying to show me a rat? I don't need to tell him to show me no rat, you know? So he says, I said, what are you talking about, this, that? He said, no, 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 no. Look at that oil slick. I said, what? Oil slick. So I looked at the oil slick, and it had all these colors running through it. He said, look at it. Isn't that a great painting? I was like, wow. And it was. It was a great painting. And I looked at it, and so now I'm always looking for stuff like that. I'm always trying to make metaphors out of stuff like that, you know, with my work, you know. And
it must have something to do with the way you really press image, like the way you really, images aren't surfacey with you, and you're very, you work images. I think about Stephen Henderson, like he worried a line. You worry images. You make images come fully, you render images full before you let them go sometimes.
Yeah, I try. That's what I'm always attempting to do. With I'm trying to merge and fuse images with music. I have a lot of musicians like my work and painters. You know, so it's always been like that for a while. That they really get it. You know, but yeah, I'm trying to do that. Oh,
Hi. I was really struck by your poem about your mom, and what struck me was how you had this full picture of her as strong, as strict, but also sensual, and, you know, as a woman. And oftentimes I think black women are kind of, as they get older, you know, become asexual, you know, sort of like, and you say she's still a pistol, and, you know, the men are still chasing after her. And it just really struck me how you made that image of her as a full person throughout her lifetime. And I just wanted you to talk about how you image black women, but particularly how could you do that, you know, with your mother, you know, which is kind of like interesting.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I'll tell you how it came about. You know, I was a college professor, university professor for 34 years. And I taught creative writing. And so at the University of California, San Diego, when I was teaching there, I asked my students, I said, okay, I want you to write a poem about your mother or somebody in your family, close to you, you know, your mother, father, grandmother, whoever. I want you to write this piece, a portrait. I said, and please do not tell me how much you love her. Don't tell me how good she is. She's a human being, and I want you to talk to her as a flawed, beautiful person. And some of them did. So they came back and said, and they did it. And I came back about a week later, and they all said, Professor Troupe. I said, yeah, we all have something to say to you. I said, what is that? They said, we want you to write a poem about your mother. I said, I'm the professor, you know understand? Not only that, I'm a full professor. I'm the highest ranking person in the humanities out here. And you talking to me like this, what? You know what I mean? Oh, I'm so sorry. I said, I control your grade. You know? And they went, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. So I went home and I thought about it. I said, they were right, you know? So I came back, I said, I was just kidding with you. I said, I'm gonna write a poem about my mother. You know, I'm gonna write a poem about my mother. It was easy for me to write a poem about my father, but I'm gonna write a poem about my mother. And now I've written about 5. I've written about 5. And in all of them, I try to deal with her as a human being, as a flawed human being. I remember some woman said to me in St. Louis, I read it. And she was still alive. She's dead now. This woman. She said, "How could you say that about your mother? That she beat you with a ironing card?" I said, "She did." I said, "I left out the part that she tied me to the bed." I said, she tied me to the bed because she was a little woman. I said, but the reason she did it was because I was so bad. I was always running around getting in trouble, beating up people and everything. I said, she said, I'm gonna beat some sense in your head, you know, and she tied me to the bed. You know what I mean? That's why that was in there. I said, and then she didn't leave it at that. And you're talking about her with the men and all that? I said, well, how did I get here? I mean, what is this? You know what I mean? What? I mean, you know, black people can be so conservative and prudish. You can't talk about sex. You know, not no panting sex, no way. You know what I mean? It's like, let's talk about it in a proper. Let's really be proper because we're God-fearing people. Oh, my brother's a minister. I grew up in the Baptist church for the first 13 years of my life. I went all day Sunday, every Sunday. You know, so I understand black folks in the church. You know, I don't need for nobody telling me about this, that, and the other. You know, and I said, you know, and my mother never did go. And she told me that why she didn't go. So, hey, you know, but you know, I understand, you know, why she was saying that. She was my mother's friend. But I'm my mother's son, and I'm a writer. And I told my mother, I said, you know, I'm a writer, and I'm going to write about you truthfully. Now, you might not like everything, but I'm sorry. Now, you know I love you. I'm bringing her to New York next week. I'm going to put up with her for 8 days. Order me around the house. You know?
Go ahead.
How you doing, Troupe? I want for you to talk a little bit more about.
Oh, there you are.
I want you to talk a little bit more about John Coltrane
Uh-huh.
and you know how he affected you in your art. Because I've heard Gail Scott Heron do an interview, and he was talking a lot about Coltrane. So I'm trying to figure out the poet's relationship with the jazzmen. Why is it always jazz as opposed to blues or as opposed to hip hop? Why I hear a lot of, you know, really good poets, people that I respect, talk about, you know, Bird or Coltrane or Miles.
And I write a lot. I write blues. I write blues too. You know, I don't like to be. See, I don't want to be pigeonholed.
Right.
See, I'm not into being pigeonholed. That I'm a blues poet or a jazz poet. I'm a rap poet. It's like I try to combine and fuse all of it, because I believe, just like Miles said. Miles said, there's no jazz, there's no blues, there's no rap, there's music. There's great music and there's bad music.
I'm sure that's what he said.
That's what he said. So there's great music and there's bad music. He said people try to compartmentalize the stuff. They try to compartmentalize it. They say, you know, this is gospel and this is blues. One is singing about Jesus and the other is singing about, oh, my baby done left me. But they got the same rhythm and the same structure. See, it's the same structure and the same form. One is talking about God and the other one is talking about my baby done left me and oh, you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, I believe in that, you know, that there's no such thing as, there's rap, but it's all music. You know, it's all music, and I come out of that. So I got a poem called Switching in the Kitchen, which was in my last book, Switching in the Kitchen, which is in The Architecture of Language, where I'm trying to combine the so-called jazz and the so-called rap thing, all of it together, you know, because rap wasn't born in no test tube. You know, it wasn't. They tend to think that they started it, but them people was joning on the corner talking about their people's mamas. You know, a long time ago in the 40s and 50s. It didn't start with in African Bambaataa in the Bronx. They tend to think, they want to believe that they started it. I mean, they put it on vinyl. Well, there's a lot of black people, a lot of black men who used to tell them, oh, you talk about your mama, she's a good old soul, she was a... You know what I mean? So, this was going on a long time. See, what I'm saying here is a continuity. It's a continuance instead of separation. You see what I'm saying? And so I try to get away from that kind of notion, because if I need to borrow a rhythm, I'm going to borrow it. Because I hear it in my head, you know, and I'm going to use it in the poetry or wherever. If it makes the piece better.
I just wanted to say first that I appreciate your realness or your reality in your writing. And also, I appreciate you acknowledging all art forms and that music is your inspiration because I do photography, but they all go hand in hand. I listen to you write or read. I come up with images in my head that I want to take a picture of. I might listen to music and the same thing. So it's nice to hear an artist acknowledge all arts. So that's all I have to say.
Well, I have to say one thing. My wife is becoming a really good photographer. And she's taking pictures so many pictures all the time. I'm saying, what about me? I'm on this trip. She's like running around taking pictures of everything, But I'm just kidding her. But it's like she's so much into taking photographs now. It's a wonderful thing to see somebody discover something. Yeah. No, I don't know. She's taking pictures of me too. She's taking pictures of me too. I said, could you cease with the pictures I'm trying to eat? So you get self-conscious when you're at the table and you got, Mark.
I have a couple of questions to ask you, Quincy, but to just respond to that gentleman back there, the Miles and particularly Miles and Coltrane are beyond category.
Yeah.
And it's not the musicians that have these categorizations. No. It's promoters and cynics. So that's something that you need to think about. I was wondering about the poems that are geared to Magic and to Michael, mm-hmm. and wondered if they ever heard it, and if you've recorded those pieces, and if you've done anything for other sports players. I was thinking particularly of somebody like Althea Gibson.
I got about 5 sports poems, and Magic used to carry that poem around with him. When he heard it, he heard about it, and he used to carry it around with him. Yeah. Michael, I only met Michael Jordan one time, and I don't know if I had written that poem. I think I had written it, but I didn't have it with me. So, and Michael couldn't be a, huh? Yeah, I think Magic did, but not Michael. Yeah. But I wrote a poem about Tiger Woods, that shot he made. It's in that book. It's in The Architecture of Language, about that incredible shot he made where the damn ball hit and pivoted and went into the hole. I saw that. I'm not a golf fan, but I was like, man, I saw that shot, and so I had to kind of get that down, get that shot down. So I don't write that many poems about sports, but I write with the energy, try to energy in the rhythm of especially basketball. Mm-hmm. Like I've been trying to write a poem about Usain Bolt at the runner.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But talk about fast.
Fast, man. This guy is unbelievable. But I cannot figure out how to do this. You know what I mean? Am I going to write it like a zip? Like blink. What? He threw.
Okay.
Have there been any works that you have regretted due to backlash or too much publicity?
No, but I wrote a poem called, I got so mad I was listening to all these white guys talking about how black people and immigrants had impacted their jobs and everything. And I wrote a poem called For All You Angry White Men. And I read it on the radio when I was in San Diego, because I was going to do a reading book signing that weekend, and I read this poem, and Tom Metzger heard it, who was over the White Aryan Nation, and he came to the reading, and came to the reading with his bodyguards, and my friend Terry, who was a white Vietnam veteran who had gone through, had hair down to here, ponytail. And so, Terry, I didn't regret it, but I'm just saying, usually it's you don't have these kind of incidents. And he came up to me, Metzger did. The place was packed. He came up to me and says, and I recognized him coming down the aisle, because they all had bullet heads and clean-shaven heads and everything. And I knew, and he came up and says, I'm Tom Metzger. I said, yeah, I know. He said, white Aryan nation. I don't know, I guess he thought I was going to be terrified. But, those days is long gone. It ain't nobody terrified. So, he says, I didn't like that poem. I didn't like that poem that you wrote, that all about angry white men. And I said, oh, yeah? I said, Miles Davis got a song. But you probably haven't heard it. He said, what's the name of the song? I said, so what? So what? You know what I mean? So what? And then I said, hey, Terry, this is Tom Metzger here. Tom Metzger, He said, Tom Metzger? And he came over there with about 3 or 4 people from Vietnam, veterans, and they put them guys out. It was all white guys against white guys, and I just kind of stepped back, and they put them out. I thought that was funny. I thought it was a badge, I thought it was a badge.
Good question. I was trying to figure out how we were going to get that story out.
I thought it was a badge, I thought it was a badge, because I just got tired of hearing people talking about, whining about people, when it wasn't me it wasn't black people that did it, it was their banker friends, the people that lived next door to them, you took them jobs away. I didn't do nothing. You see what I'm saying? We didn't do nothing. But they was whining about we did this and we did this and black. I'm like, please. I mean, when people have had privilege all their lives, they can't take it. They can't take it when when some stuff happens to them. Black people have been suffering for so long. What about, the foot on the neck in the South? That don't count no more. Well, forget about that. You know what I mean? Forget about it. But if they jobs are lost, I mean, like this whole thing about Barack Obama, I got a whole thing about that, but I ain't going to go into it. It's just too crazy for me. It's just too crazy for me.
We only have a time for a couple more, 2 more I'm hearing. And you're up.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what are your feelings on poetry on the page versus poetry aloud? And in poetry aloud, sometimes some of the theme may be lost, but there's so many more elements that are experienced and can only be experienced aloud. But then poetry on the page, themes can be followed and other trains of thought can be followed that the poet is probably trying to get across. So are there places for both? Probably, but then do you sway with one over the other?
Well, I think that poetry is a craft. First of all, I think, to clear this up, I hope. I think poetry is a craft, and I rewrite my poems like 15, 20 times, and I have an intent, for getting the craft down. The craft is very important to me. It's very important to me, the craft, and so I'm not one of those persons who I exist in a zone where I write my poems for craft, and I can do villanelles, sestinas, all of that. I can do all of those forms, and I can do the iambics and everything else. But at the same time, I'm trying to fashion another kind of work that lives on the page too. For the most part, I'm writing to be published. So in order to write to be published and to be read, let me go back a little bit. So I'm writing, and I don't have nothing against people, because one of my best friends who just died 2 or 3 years ago, Sekou Sundiata, a great poet, who decided at the same time, he was a basketball player, and he decided he was going to make albums. And I remember when he came up and told me, he said, I'm going to make albums. I'm going to do mine spoken word, and I'm going to have a band. And I said, yeah, well, I am not going to go that way, because we were doing a lot of readings together. I said, I'm going to write mine for the page, and then I'm going to get a band sometime and work with the band or with musicians from time to time. But Sekou went out and got him a band, and he had a great band. I love Sekou. I really did. I thought he was the best. He was the best I've ever heard with the band. That'd be cool. So I look at myself as a poet who writes crafted poems, and then and as I have done many times, work with Douglas Earwood here, who was talking to you, a great musician, then I try to make my poems get up in the air. You understand? In dealing with him, then it's a collaboration. You see, it's a collaboration with Douglas, or it's a collaboration with George Lewis, or it's a collaboration with the group I work with now, QKR, Quincy, Kelvin Bell, and Ronnie Barrage. And we are doing an album now. And it's about when I come together with them, It's a collaboration. What that means is I leave some of my stuff out. I leave whole stanzas and whole lines out, you know, when I'm listening to them do stuff and I'm trying to react to what they do. Because when you do things with music in a public space, it's about you listening to them too. It's not about them just backing you up, you know, being a backup. You know, ching, 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 and you reading your little stuff over it. And they in the background. No, it's a collaboration and y'all hitting like that. And Douglas is playing his licks and I'm trying to deal with it. I remember I came here to the Walker, Hammett blew it and myself. Hammett blew it and we had rehearsed all week on this program. 1,000 people, however many people was in that auditorium. An hour and a half before we were supposed to go on, Hammett said, "Hey, Quincy." I said, "Yeah. I don't feel like playing that program we did." I said, "So what we gonna do, brother?" He said, "We just gonna hit." I said, "Okay. All right." So we got out there and the woman introduced us. "Ladies and gentlemen, Quincy Troupe and Hammett blew it." Before he could get his horn up to his mouth, I was gone. I was reading boom like this. He had to catch up with me. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to be trying to follow behind him. You know, and he looked at me, he was shocked. I was gone, man. I didn't announce no tunes. I didn't announce no poems. I didn't say, "This is the John Coltrane." It was just one whole line of poems, you know. And after it was over, he came to me and said, "Man, that was cold, man. That was cold." I said, "No, what was cold was what you did." That was cold, brother.
I think we're out of time. I just got to say one more thing about the jazz thing. Or about the Coltrane Miles thing, and I think that a lot of poets talk about that because it is the first contact they have with momentary freedom. Like it is the place where they learn what is possible in free space. And Miles Coltrane he teaches you that. If you can follow him, or if you realize where he's coming from, the moment where you're with him in that space, there's no control over him. He's free. And I think Miles achieves that same degree of freedom. Okay, well, round of applause for Quincy Troupe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.